Okay, so I wanted to come back with another video where I can further expand on how all women have creator energy. And as a result of all women having creator energy, all women have inherent value that we possess, right? And all women are natural conduits for wealth and abundance as a result of that creator energy that we all possess inherently. Now, with us having that energy naturally, it is very imperative, and I've talked about this in 2 different videos before, it is very imperative that women do not frequent certain environments where that kind of creator energy, abundant wealth generation is going to be exploited and extracted, right? And I felt that the easiest way to kind of explain how this occurs was to examine kind of like or correlate it to the pimp-hoe dynamic that occurs in low trust communities and low trust societies and environments. And this is a topic I've always wanted to talk on. And I probably will make several videos discussing this particular dynamic that exists, this pimp-hoe dynamic, because I've had direct exposure to it working as an advocate on behalf of young women and girls that were once a part of that lifestyle and they are trying to transition out of it. I have worked with nonprofit organizations in New York City that help young women and girls to get out of that life. For those that are unaware, sex trafficking is huge in the New York City area. The primary hubs for it around the country is LA, New York City, and I believe Atlanta and potentially Miami, but for sure New York City, Atlanta, and Los Angeles, right? And for those that also may not be as familiar, some of the biggest victims of sex trafficking in America, specifically in the United States, are Black women and specifically Black underage girls. They are by far way more overrepresented within the sex trafficking world than any other racial group of women and young girls specifically. And the nonprofit organization that I worked with, they primarily the girls that were coming through looking for help, they did happen to be young Black and Latina women and young girls. So getting that up close and personal exposure to that allowed me to see just how that level of exploitation and extraction occurs in those communities, which usually are low trust communities that they're coming from, right? Low trust communities and societies are plagued with extraction energy and very little investment. Reciprocal type of energies are noticeably absent. You know, I talked about this in the transactional video. We live in this realm is full. It's a realm built on transactions. And transactional, every situation requires a transaction of some sort. But there are certain environments where there is more of an abundance or prevalence of unequal and uneven transactions. And that's usually what you'll see in low trust communities. And I think that when you look at areas where you see a lot of the pimping behavior or prevalence of pimps, because not for nothing, prostitution is extremely old profession. It's considered one of the oldest professions in the world, right? And it has long existed, centuries and centuries before, right? Before Jesus walked the earth, women were selling it, right? But they were doing so without having that third party interference, right? But when you look at the pimp-hoe dynamic specifically as it occurs in the United States, pimps are proof that women are conduits for abundance and wealth, right? Because pimping wouldn't even be able to be a thing if there was not some inherent value tied to women and access. If the access to our temples were not the closest thing to heaven on earth, then there would be no market for it, right? Every woman on earth holds the gates of heavens between her legs, right? This is a fact. But I think that when you have this pimp-hoe dynamic occurring, it's because you had a specific male group that saw an opportunity to enrich in themselves by exploiting that practice of women selling themselves, right, in order to enrich themselves, right? They saw an opportunity to capitalize on a practice that's been going on forever, right, by inserting themselves and making that extraction, and not properly investing back in the women, right? And I think that the reason why you see that prevalence of this occurring with certain males or certain male groups is because certain males are not properly balanced in their masculine and feminine energies. And shout out to Shy the Sage, because she did a great video talking about that, and I literally got that from her. But when you have males who aren't properly balanced in those energies, where they naturally embody that provider builder mindset, like they don't have that architect type of mindset that go out and get it, that hard working energy, you end up getting these lesser males who have to opt instead for manipulation or coercive tactics in order to survive. And this is how you end up getting your pimp archetypes, or even like your dusty, degenerate homosexual types, because that those two can occur simultaneously. They both are exploitative in different ways, but essentially shiftless losers that have to parasitically latch on to women and siphon from the feminine in order to create a channel of wealth and income for themselves, right? They're totally incapable of providing for themselves because their inherent conscious levels are too low. Like, when you think of these are individuals that are operating on the 2D, right? They're not even on the third dimension, right? Energetically, they are very weak, right? Like their energetic bodies are weak. Think of them of preemie babies, right? That they're barely holding on to this realm by the skin of their teeth. They're like parasites. They have to latch onto a host or multiple hosts in order to survive. And without the women that they're pimping or actively extracting from, they would be nothing. They would be absolutely nothing without them, right? And this is actually the primary reason that a lot of them will lash out or try to unalive the women they're pimping when they are thinking of going rogue, or they're being difficult in any kind of way. And also, a lot of times that's also the ones that are stupid, to lack of better word. They're dumb, the ones that will the gorilla pimps that will beat up on the women and do which is so dumb, because it's literally you're ruining your quote unquote product, right? But even the boyfriend pimp archetypes, they too can get violent when it looks or even more manipulative, right? Or even more they can exert even more damage psychologically on the woman if they do feel like their grip on her is loosening and she's attempting to break away or pull away from them, right? And then the same goes for the homosexual loser degenerate ones that don't have anything to their name, and they have zero desire to work hard or fully embrace their masculine. They get violent as well as soon as they're threatened with having to move out, or if the woman they're leeching off of expresses that she wants them to contribute to the home in any way. And this goes beyond even sexual relationships, right? We've seen scenarios where the son that is living at home with his mother, he's been living at home for years, and he is suddenly the mother's well, could you get a job? Are you able to pay some bills? And then he flips out and he kills her, right? Again, they go on the attack when they realize that their safety and their provisions are being threatened by being told that they have to show up in the world as a man. Because again, we have to remember that they resent even having been born to begin with. These are the ones that resent having to function as a man in society and having to show up in the world, and so they already resent having to be here, right? They already resent having to be here, but now you're telling them, oh, could you also contribute the household and pay bills and act like a normal functioning, effective contributor to society, right? They're not trying to hear that, right? And then they go on the attack. And, going back to what I was saying in the beginning, a lot of the venom and the hatred towards women is due to the fact that they know and they can sense that creator energy in us, and that they can sense that we all have inherent value in us. If we did not, then there would not be this concerted effort to always ask this question of like, what do you bring to the table, and trying to question and kind of chip away at a woman's self-esteem, because they already know that we have it, but because they know that they don't, they must tear us down, right? But I will say that all women have inherent value because we embody creator energy, but that value can be increased or decreased based on our association with men, right? So the right man will add value, aka like invest in you, invest time, energy, money into you. And the wrong male is always going to decrease your value by way of extraction, taking away. And again, that aspect it's most glaring and obvious when you do observe the pimp-hoe dynamic, because essentially, like, the hoe, right, or the 304 has inherent value just by being a woman, whom another man is willing to make an even exchange or an even transaction with, right, for her time, right? Like a woman could just be walking down the street, right? You go on the blade, right? You could just be walking down. You could be on the blade, and all you're doing is walking down the street, and there's men trying to pay you for your time, right? Just for the sake of you being a woman. You're just sitting there. You're just standing there. You're walking there, and they're willing to pay you for a piece of your time, And sidebar, you don't even have to be selling it, because years ago, I remember I was on my way to work. This was like pre-pandemic, so it was like going into office, and I remember like I was working in an area in Manhattan that they call Billionaires Row, and that area, like I think like every woman needs to work or live in close proximity to an area with a lot of money, because just even being in that environment can be so enriching. And I remember I was walking down the street. I was actually running late for work, and this guy, they were working on this building forever, but it was one of the construction guys, and he stopped me, and he was like, "Can I talk to you? Can I take you out? Can I do that?" And I was like, "No, like I'm busy. Like I've gotta go to work." And he was like, I'll pay you for like what you make in a day. Just that, can you like, I'll give you how much you make in a day." And I literally looked at him, and I was like, "Are you sure you can afford it?" And mind you, I wasn't even making that much money at the time. I mean, I was working in customer service in office at that particular time, so I wasn't like making a ton. But I found that really cheeky to say to him, because it's like, dude, like, how do you even know what I make? You don't even know what kind of job I'm heading to. Like, what are you signing up for? And he looked at me and he was like, "Oh, well, how much do you make?" Like, okay, like I'm not trying to set myself up here. And honestly, I just left after that. After I said that, I just kind of just moved on, because again, I was late for work. But that's a very real thing. Like, men will stop you and be like, "I will pay you for your time," right? "I'll pay you so you don't have to go to work. I'll pay you what you make in a day. Just to get your time." Shara Seven also had a similar, I think her origin story with James was also similar. Like, she met him in a bar right before she was about to clock in for her shift, and he offered to, not only pay what she made in a day, but he offered to pay some bills for her, just to be able to get a piece of her time in the day, right? That's just by being a woman, not even with you having to sell it, or in that moment, right? Just by being a woman, you have that. You're like a natural conduit for money and abundance, right? But when a pimp or a man inserts himself in a situation, you have this pimp, this lesser male, that's inserting himself into that dynamic. It's because they see your power, they see your inherent value as a woman, and they want to capitalize on it. The parasitic pimp will see all of that playing out about you just sitting there and receiving, just naturally receiving, and he'll want to capitalize on it. He'll want to leech off of the woman by inserting himself into that transaction, that even transaction that's happening, and he'll take the money, right? And now, before anyone says like, "Oh, like the pimp hoe dynamic, the woman gives the money willingly. I would say foolishly she gives her money over because she's not realizing her own inherent value. Like in that dynamic, like clearly the woman, if you're at that point in your life, clearly you don't fully understand your full value as a woman, right? That's what the purpose of this video is for, to tell women, or to show how women do have inherent value, right? Whether they realize it or not. But she foolishly gives over her money. That's still an extraction that's occurring because she's the one putting the wear and tear on her body. She's absorbing all of those energies. She's taking on all of those souls without reaping any real tangible benefits from it, because the pimp invests very little back into her. Like he's mainly extracted. This is like a very soul crushing dynamic for the working girl, quote unquote, because she's just being consumed without reciprocity. This is an uneven exchange, right? It's an unequal transaction, right? And when women and young girls find themselves in these kind of dynamics, oftentimes it's because they have reached a point in their life where they're completely out of touch with their intuition, and they're essentially a shell of themselves, because they are just simply being used as like a vessel for wealth generation or income generation, without fully owning it. Like they have literally no autonomy over themselves, right? And this is speaking specifically of the women that allow themselves to be under a pimp, right? Because you have other ones that are like free agents. I don't know, there's a name for them. I've seen it in software underbelly videos. I can't remember the term that they call themselves. Oh, renegade. You do have the renegade ones, but even with them, like, they're I think they're few and far in between, because there's such a high prevalence of pimping that's occurring nowadays, of sex trafficking that is occurring nowadays with women. And the women that are being trafficked, that are being preyed upon, those women are incapable of seeing their value, right? If they were to truly self-actualize and see what value that they possess, they wouldn't even allow themselves to be involved with a pimp, right? They probably wouldn't even want to be involved in the life at all, right? Because they would know that they embody a type of energy that doesn't even require them to take off their clothes in order to get money, in order to get attention, in order to be able to extract from another male, or have another male invest in them, right? And going back to what I was saying earlier in the video, and the same as I said in my low trust environments video, it's very imperative that women and young girls specifically try to make a concerted effort to get out of low trust environments, because they're aware this kind of pimp hoe dynamic festers. Like they heavily foster environments where exploitation is rife, and women and children are not safe. And you have to remove yourself or heavily distance yourself from those areas as a woman, because otherwise you're just going to be preyed upon. You're going to find yourself being oppressed, exploited, extracted from. When you look at those environments, those ghettos, those hoods, and you see the blight and the dilapidation and all of that, it's because there's been nothing but extraction, right? There's been nothing but extraction. There has been no investment into the people that live there, into the homes that exist there. All people have done is extract, right? Therefore, you as a woman, as a young girl, you need to pivot to areas where there's higher trust and there's more communal investment in keeping the area safe, keeping the neighborhood safe, so that you don't have to worry about being preyed upon or exploited or extracted from, or someone using your body, your literal body, as a conduit for money, right? You don't have to worry about falling into that. You don't have to even worry about being desperate enough to have to resort to that in order to make ends meet, right? And yeah, I mean, that's really the crux of this video, y'all. It's just, it's very important in order for women to fully self-actualize and recognize their own inherent value and how we embody the creator energy. It's very important in order to do that, to recognize that, to remove yourself from low trust communities and environments. Also, forgot to mention this earlier in the video, but any male that would actually sit there and argue that all women do not have inherent value or because of creator energy that we have, I would argue that those males are actually talking about their own mother, because they don't believe their own mother has any inherent value, because they hate themselves and they hate that they were born, they hate that they were brought here, and they feel like their own mothers didn't have any real value, that they just laid down with any old man and created them, and they resent her for that. So I would definitely, if you end up seeing any comments like that before I get to deleting them, definitely ignore them, y'all.